The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Maya finally clocked out. She pulled off her scrubs top and tossed it into the laundry bin with a heavy sigh. Her feet ached in ways that only a double shift could create. 16 hours in the emergency room had left her completely drained, but at least she was done for the next 2 days. "You heading out?" asked Dr. Chen, who was grabbing coffee from the machine near the staff exit. "Finally," Maya replied, slipping on her jacket. "I think I forgot what my apartment looks like." Dr. Chen chuckled. "Want me to call you a cab?" "It's pretty late." Maya considered it for a moment. The cab would cost her about $20, maybe more with the late-night rates. $20 that she really needed for groceries this week. Her student loan payments had gone up again, and every dollar mattered. "Nah, I'm good. Fresh air will help me unwind," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The automatic doors whooshed open and the cool night air hit her face. It was actually refreshing after being under those harsh hospital lights all day. Maya pulled her phone out to check the time again and saw 3 missed calls from her mom. She'd call her back tomorrow. Right now, all she wanted was her bed. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few cars belonging to the night shift workers. Maya's beat-up Honda was parked in the employee section, but she'd decided weeks ago to start walking home when possible. The gas money saved really added up, and the 8-block walk wasn't too bad during the day. At night, though, it felt different. She started down the main hospital driveway, her sneakers quiet against the asphalt. The security guard waved at her from his booth, and she waved back. At least someone knew she was leaving. That made her feel a little better. Once she reached the sidewalk, Maya looked both ways down the street. To her right was the longer route that stayed on well-lit main roads. To her left was her usual shortcut through the residential area. Darker, but it would get her home 10 minutes faster. Her feet were screaming for relief. She turned left. The first few blocks weren't too bad. There were still a few lights on in apartments, and she could hear the distant hum of late-night traffic from the highway. Maya kept her keys threaded between her fingers, just like her mom had shown her years ago. Not to hurt anyone, her mom had explained, but to make noise and give yourself confidence. The confidence part was working, sort of. Maya found herself walking with more purpose, her shoulders back and head up. She'd read somewhere that looking confident made you less of a target. Whether that was true or not, it certainly made her feel better. As she walked, Maya let her mind wander to tomorrow's plans. She'd promised herself she'd finally clean out her closet and maybe try that new Thai restaurant down the street. Simple plans, but after the chaos of the ER, simple sounded perfect. There had been a car accident earlier that evening. Nothing too serious, thankfully, but it reminded her why she loved her job despite the exhaustion. The streetlights here were older, casting pools of yellow light with long shadows between them. Maya found herself speeding up slightly as she walked through the darker patches. Her apartment building had good lighting in the front, and she could picture herself climbing those familiar stairs to the 3rd floor. She was thinking about whether she had enough milk for cereal in the morning when she first heard them. Footsteps behind her. Maya slowed her pace slightly, listening. The footsteps slowed too. Probably just another late-night walker, she told herself. Lots of people worked odd hours in this part of town. The hospital, the 24-hour diner, the gas station. Plenty of reasons for someone else to be out this late. But the footsteps stayed consistent with hers as she sped up and slowed down. Maya's heart started beating a little faster. She pulled out her phone and pretended to check a message, using the opportunity to glance back over her shoulder. 2 figures were about half a block behind her, walking at a steady pace that seemed to match hers perfectly. In the dim light, she couldn't make out much about them, but they appeared to be men. Young men walking side by side. Maya faced forward again and picked up her pace. Maybe they were just going in the same direction. The rational part of her brain tried to stay calm, but the part that had watched too many true crime shows was starting to panic. She thought about calling someone, but who would she call at midnight? Her mom would freak out and probably call the police. Her roommate Lisa was visiting family in another state. Most of her co-workers were either still at the hospital or asleep. 3 more blocks to go. Maya could see the outline of her apartment building in the distance, though it was hard to make out clearly in the darkness. The streetlight on the corner near her building had been out for weeks, something the city kept promising to fix. The footsteps behind her were getting closer. Or maybe that was just her imagination. Maya wished she'd taken Dr. Chen up on that cab offer. $20 seemed like nothing compared to this growing knot of fear in her stomach. She passed the old bookstore that had been closed for months, its windows covered with newspaper. During the day, this block felt safe and familiar. At night, all those closed storefronts looked like perfect hiding spots. Maya shook her head, trying to push away thoughts that weren't helping. 2 more blocks. She could make it 2 more blocks. Maya decided to test her theory about the men behind her. At the next corner, instead of continuing straight toward her apartment, she turned right. If they were just random pedestrians, they'd keep going straight. The footsteps turned right too. Now Maya's heart was really racing. She pulled out her phone again, this time seriously considering calling someone. But what would she say? "Hi, I think someone might be following me, but I'm not really sure. And I'll be home in 5 minutes anyway." She turned left at the next corner, back toward her original route. The footsteps followed. Maya was now certain she was being followed. Her hands started to shake slightly as she gripped her keys tighter. The apartment building was just ahead, maybe 2 minutes of fast walking. She could make it. But as she rounded the final corner onto her street, Maya realized the streetlight situation was worse than she remembered. The broken light near her building cast the entire block in deep shadow. The safety she'd been walking toward suddenly felt much less safe. She was halfway down the block when she heard the footsteps quickening behind her. Maya's breathing got shallow as she tried to decide whether to run or keep walking normally. Running might provoke them, but walking was giving them time to catch up. Before she could decide, she heard the footsteps change from a walk to a jog. Maya's whole body tensed as she prepared to run, but suddenly a hand grabbed her arm firmly. "Walk faster," said a gruff male voice right next to her ear. Maya's entire body went rigid. Every self-defense class she'd ever taken flashed through her mind in an instant. Her mom's voice echoed in her head. "If someone grabs you, make noise, scream, fight back." But something stopped her from following that advice immediately. The hand on her arm wasn't dragging her or trying to pull her anywhere. It was firm but not painful. And the voice, though gruff and urgent, didn't sound threatening in the way she'd expected. "Please, just keep walking normally," the voice continued. "Quieter now. Don't turn around. Don't look back. There are 2 men about 50 yards behind us, and they've been following you since you left the hospital." Maya's blood turned to ice water. Her worst fears were confirmed, but in the strangest possible way. The person holding her arm was telling her about the danger, not creating it. "Who are you?" she whispered, barely able to get the words out. "Someone who's been watching them watch you," he replied. "I'm going to let go of your arm now, but please keep walking with me. Act like we're together, like we're having a normal conversation." The hand released her arm, and Maya felt both relief and terror at the same time. She glanced sideways at the man walking beside her. He was maybe in his 40s, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. Nothing particularly threatening about his appearance, but Maya had learned that appearances meant nothing. "How do I know you're not working with them?" she asked, her voice shaking despite her efforts to sound calm. "Because if I was working with them, we'd be having a very different conversation right now," he said simply. "And because I'm about to prove it to you." They reached the end of the block, and Maya's apartment building was just across the street. The broken streetlight made everything look like a black and white movie, all shadows and dim shapes. "Don't go to your building," the man said quietly. "They know where you live. I've seen them walk past it twice in the last week, always around the time you get home from late shifts." Maya's heart sank. Her safe haven, the place she'd been walking toward for comfort, was compromised. Then where am I supposed to go? There's a 24-hour coffee shop 2 blocks down. Bright lights, security cameras, other people around. We can call the police from there. "The police?" Maya stopped walking for a second. "You want to call the police?" "Keep moving," he said gently, and she started walking again. "Yes, the police. Because what's happening to you isn't random, and it's not the first time." They turned the corner away from Maya's street. She wanted to look back so badly, to see if the men were still following, but her mysterious protector had told her not to. Instead, she focused on putting one foot in front of the other and trying to process. "So what was happening? What do you mean it's not the first time?" she asked. "There have been 3 other incidents in the past month. All women, all hospital workers, all walking home from late shifts. 2 of them were attacked. One got away because a car scared the guys off." Maya felt sick. "How do you know all this?" "Because it's my job to know." Something in the way he said it made Maya look at him more carefully. There was an authority in his voice that hadn't been there before. a confidence that spoke of training and experience. "Are you a cop?" she asked. "Detective," he confirmed. "Off duty tonight, but I've been working this case. I live about 4 blocks from here, and I've been taking different routes home trying to spot patterns." Maya felt the first real wave of relief she'd experienced since leaving the hospital. "So you've been protecting me without me knowing it." "Not exactly protecting. More like keeping an eye out. I noticed you walking the same route several times over the past 2 weeks. Always alone, always late at night. It fit the pattern we were seeing with the other victims. They were getting close to the coffee shop now. Maya could see the bright fluorescent lights spilling out onto the sidewalk, and it looked like the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "Tonight was different, though," the detective continued. "I was heading home around 11:30 when I saw you leave the hospital. I was planning to just make sure you got home safely. Keep my distance like usual, but then I spotted those 2 guys." "Where?" Maya asked. "I mean, when did you first see them?" "They were hanging around the hospital parking lot when you came out. At first I thought maybe they worked there too, but they started following you immediately. That's when I knew something was wrong." Maya thought back to her walk. She'd been so focused on her own tiredness and her sore feet that she hadn't paid attention to anything happening behind her until those last few blocks. "I stayed on the opposite side of the street, trying to keep parallel with you," the detective explained. "But when they started getting closer, I realized I needed to intervene directly. So you grabbed my arm to warn me?" "I grabbed your arm to make them think you weren't alone anymore. Predators look for isolated victims. The moment it appears someone has backup, they usually back off." They reached the coffee shop, and Maya had never been so happy to see fluorescent lighting and the smell of burnt coffee. Through the window, she could see a few customers scattered around tables and a bored-looking employee behind the counter. "Did it work?" Maya asked as they approached the door. "Did they back off?" The detective paused with his hand on the door handle. "Let's find out." He opened the door and gestured for Maya to go in first, but he didn't follow immediately. Instead, he stood in the doorway looking back down the street they'd just walked. Maya went to a table near the window and sat down, her legs suddenly feeling weak now that she was somewhere safe. The warmth of the coffee shop felt like a hug after the cold fear of the street. The detective came in and sat across from her. "They're gone," he said. "But I still want to call this in and get a patrol car to take you home safely." "Thank you," Maya said, and realized those 2 words didn't even come close to expressing what she was feeling. "I mean, really. Thank you. If you hadn't been there, but I was there," he said simply. "That's what matters." The employee behind the counter looked over at them with mild interest. Maya realized how strange they must look. 2 people who clearly didn't know each other well, sitting together in a nearly empty coffee shop after midnight, both looking slightly shaken. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "Of course. How did you know I was in danger tonight specifically? I mean, you said you'd been keeping an eye on the pattern, but how did you know tonight was the night?" The detective's expression darkened. "Because we got a tip earlier today. Someone called in saying they'd overheard 2 men planning something for tonight. They mentioned the hospital and described someone who matched your general appearance." Maya felt cold again despite the warmth of the coffee shop. "Someone called in a tip about me specifically? About someone like you?" "We didn't have a name or an exact description, just that they were targeting a female hospital worker who walked home alone after late shifts." Maya stared at him, trying to process this information. "So you've been looking for me all evening?" "I've been looking for whoever they were planning to target. It just happened to be you." The detective pulled out his phone and started dialing. "I'm calling for a patrol car to take you home, and I need to report what just happened." Maya watched him dial, still trying to wrap her head around everything. 20 minutes ago, she was just a tired nurse walking home from work. Now she was sitting in a coffee shop at midnight, learning that she'd been the target of a planned attack. "Detective Rodriguez, badge number 4471, he said into the phone. "I need a patrol unit at Mel's Coffee on 5th Street. I also need to report suspicious activity related to the hospital worker case." While he talked to dispatch, Maya looked around the coffee shop. The employee behind the counter was a young guy, maybe college age, reading a textbook between customers. There was an older woman in the corner booth staring at her laptop screen. A taxi driver sat at another table, drinking coffee and scrolling through his phone. Normal people doing normal things at an abnormal hour. It felt surreal. All these people going about their late-night routines while Maya had just escaped something terrible. "They'll be here in about 10 minutes. Rodriguez said, hanging up the phone. Are you okay? You look pretty shaken up. I think I'm still processing it, Maya admitted. This morning when I woke up, the biggest worry I had was whether I'd have enough energy to get through a double shift. I never imagined. That's normal, Rodriguez said. Most people don't walk around thinking about this kind of danger. That's actually a good thing. The world would be a pretty dark place if everyone had to constantly worry about being attacked. The coffee shop employee approached their table. You guys want anything to drink? Coffee? Hot chocolate? Maya realized she hadn't eaten or drunk anything since dinner at 6. Hot chocolate sounds perfect, actually. Make that too, Rodriguez said. Thanks. After the employee left, Maya looked at Rodriguez more carefully. In the bright lights of the coffee shop, he looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his jacket was wrinkled like he'd been wearing it for a long time. How long have you been working on this case? She asked. About 6 weeks. Ever since the first attack. Can you tell me about the others? The women who were attacked, I mean. Are they okay? Rodriguez hesitated for a moment. The first victim was a lab technician at Metro General. She was walking to her car in the parking garage after an evening shift. 2 men approached her, demanded her purse and phone. When she tried to run, they knocked her down. She ended up with a concussion and a broken wrist. Maya felt her stomach twist. And the second one? Respiratory therapist at Children's Hospital. Same pattern, late shift, walking alone. But this time they were more aggressive. She fought back and managed to get away, but not before they... He paused. She's recovering, but it was rough. The hot chocolate arrived and Maya wrapped her hands around the warm mug. The sweetness was comforting, but she could barely taste it. The third incident was different, Rodriguez continued. A pharmacy tech was walking home when she noticed she was being followed. She got smart and ducked into a convenience store. The guys waited outside for about 10 minutes, then gave up when a police car happened to drive by. So tonight would have been the fourth, Maya said quietly. Yeah, and based on the pattern, they're getting bolder, more aggressive each time. Maya stared into her hot chocolate. The tip you got today, do you know who called it in? Anonymous call to the tip line. But here's the thing. The caller knew details that weren't public. Knew about the pattern. Knew they were targeting hospital workers specifically. What kind of details? Rodriguez leaned forward slightly. The caller said they'd overheard 2 men talking about the nurse who walks home alone. They mentioned your route, your approximate build, even the fact that you usually get off work between 11:30 and midnight. A chill ran down Maya's spine. Someone's been watching me that closely? It appears that way. But here's what's interesting. I don't think the person who called in the tip was involved in planning the attack. Why not? Because if they were part of it, why warn us? The call came in at 4 o'clock this afternoon. That gave us time to be ready, time to be watching. If someone wanted the attack to succeed, they wouldn't have called. Maya thought about this. So someone else knew about the plan and wanted to stop it? That's my theory. Maybe someone who overheard the planning and got scared. Maybe someone who knew one of the attackers and didn't want them to go through with it. Through the window, Maya could see police lights approaching. Red and blue flashes reflected off the glass storefronts across the street. There's something else, Rodriguez said, watching the patrol car pull up. The tip mentioned that tonight wasn't just random timing. They specifically chose tonight because they thought you'd be extra tired and less alert after a double shift. How could they possibly know I was working a double shift? That's what we need to figure out. Either they've been watching you very closely or what? Or they have some connection to the hospital. Someone who knows the staff schedules. 2 uniformed officers entered the coffee shop and Rodriguez stood up to greet them. Maya heard him explaining the situation in quiet tones, using police terminology that she didn't fully understand. Words like attempted approach, suspicious activity, and pattern recognition. One of the officers, a woman who looked to be in her 30s, came over to Maya's table. I'm Officer Kim. I understand you've had quite a night. That's one way to put it, Maya said. I'd like to get a statement from you about what happened. Just walk me through everything from when you left work until now. For the next 15 minutes, Maya recounted the evening's events, starting with leaving the hospital, the decision to walk instead of taking a cab, the growing awareness that she was being followed, and finally Rodriguez's intervention. Did you get a good look at the men who were following you? Officer Kim asked. Not really. It was pretty dark, and I was trying not to look back too obviously. I could tell there were 2 of them, and they seemed to be young men, but that's about all I could make out. The second officer, an older man with gray hair, was talking with Rodriguez by the counter. Maya could hear fragments of their conversation, something about surveillance footage from the hospital and coordinating with other precincts. "One more question," Officer Kim said. "Have you noticed anything unusual in the past few weeks? Anyone paying extra attention to you at work? Following you, anything like that?" Maya thought about it. "Not that I can remember. But honestly, I work such long hours and I'm usually so tired when I leave that I might not have noticed." "What about at home? Any strange phone calls, packages, people lurking around your building?" "No, nothing like that." Officer Kim closed her notebook. "We're going to have a patrol unit take you home and do a security check of your building. Detective Rodriguez also mentioned that they'll probably want to interview you again tomorrow when you're less shaken up." Rodriguez returned to the table. "The patrol unit will follow you home and make sure everything's secure. I've also arranged for increased patrols in your neighborhood for the next few days." "What about work tomorrow? I mean today, I guess. I'm supposed to be off, but I'm scheduled again tomorrow night." "I'd recommend taking a few days off if possible," Rodriguez said. "At least until we can figure out how they knew so much about your schedule." Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure how she'd explain this to her supervisor. "Do you think they'll try again?" "Probably not immediately. The fact that their plan got disrupted plus the increased police presence should make them back off for a while. But Maya, yeah, don't walk home alone anymore. Not until we catch these guys. Take cabs, ask coworkers for rides, whatever you need to do. Your safety isn't worth saving $20. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Maya looked back at the table where they'd been sitting. An hour ago, she'd been terrified and confused. Now she felt something different, still scared but also grateful and strangely determined. "Detective Rodriguez?" she said as they walked toward the door. "Yeah? Thank you for being exactly where I needed you to be tonight." He smiled for the first time all evening. "That's what we're here for." The patrol car ride back to Maya's apartment felt strange. She sat in the passenger seat while Officer Kim drove, with Detective Rodriguez following behind in his own car. The streets that had seemed so threatening an hour ago now looked ordinary under the patrol car's headlights. "First time in a police car?" Officer Kim asked, noticing Maya's nervous fidgeting. "Yeah, not exactly how I pictured my night ending. Could have been worse," Kim said matter-of-factly. "A lot worse." Maya knew she was right, but the reality of what almost happened was still sinking in. Every time she thought about those men following her, planning to attack her, her stomach twisted into knots. They turned onto Maya's street, and immediately she could see something was different. There was another police car parked across from her building, and 2 officers were walking around the area with flashlights. "What's going on?" Maya asked. Kim spoke into her radio. "Unit 47, this is Unit 23. We're approaching the location with the victim. What's your status?" The radio crackled back. "We found something you need to see. 2 suspects detained around the corner on Maple Street." Maya's heart jumped. "They caught them?" "Sounds like it," Kim said, pulling up in front of Maya's building. Rodriguez appeared at Maya's window. "They've got 2 men in custody about 3 blocks from here. Want to take a look and see if you recognize them?" Maya's mouth went dry. The thought of seeing the men who had been stalking her, even from the safety of a police car, was terrifying. But she knew she had to try. "Okay," she said quietly. They drove the short distance to Maple Street, where Maya could see several police cars with their lights flashing. 2 men sat in the back of one patrol car, hands cuffed behind them. Even from a distance, Maya could see they matched the vague shapes she remembered from her walk. "Just take a quick look," Rodriguez said. "Don't get out of the car. Just see if they look familiar." Kim pulled up about 20 feet away from the patrol car holding the suspects. Maya leaned forward to get a better view. The first man looked young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair and a thin build. He was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. The second was slightly older and heavier, wearing a leather jacket. Both men looked angry and frustrated, clearly upset about being caught. "I think that's them," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, I can't be completely sure because it was so dark, but the builds match what I remember." "That's helpful," Rodriguez said. "Even a partial identification is better than nothing." One of the officers from the scene walked over to their car. "Detective, we found some interesting items on these 2. He held up a clear evidence bag containing what looked like zip ties, duct tape, and a small knife. Maya felt sick looking at the contents of the bag. What were they planning to do with that? Nothing good, the officer replied grimly. We also found this. He held up another evidence bag containing a piece of paper. Even through the plastic, Maya could see handwriting on it. It's a list, the officer continued. Names, addresses, work schedules. Your information is on here along with details about 3 other hospital workers. Maya stared at the bag in shock. They had a list? With my name on it? Your name, your address, your typical work schedule, even a description of what you usually wear walking home, Rodriguez said, taking the evidence bag to examine it more closely. How is that possible? How could they know all that about me? That's what we need to figure out. But Maya, this changes everything. This wasn't random. This was a carefully planned operation targeting multiple people. The implications of what Rodriguez was saying hit Maya all at once. The other women who were attacked, were their names on previous lists? We're going to find out. This could be the break we've been looking for in all these cases. Kim's radio crackled again. All units, we need detective and witness back at the station for questioning and identification procedures. Maya looked at Rodriguez. What does that mean? It means we need to do this properly. Official identification, formal statements, the whole process. Are you up for that tonight, or would you rather wait until tomorrow? Maya thought about it. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, and wanted nothing more than to go home and sleep. But she also knew that every minute they waited was another minute these men might find a way out of the charges. Let's do it tonight, she said. I want to get this over with. The police station at 2 in the morning was a completely different world from the hospital where Maya worked. Bright fluorescent lights, the smell of old coffee and cleaning products, the constant buzz of activity even in the middle of the night. Rodriguez led Maya to a small conference room and brought her a cup of coffee that was somehow both too strong and too weak at the same time. While we're waiting for everything to be set up, can you think of anyone at the hospital who might have had access to your schedule information? He asked. Maya wrapped her hands around the warm coffee cup and tried to think. I mean, lots of people would know when I'm working. I supervise her, the other nurses on my floor, people in HR, security guards. What about people outside the hospital? Friends, family, neighbors? I live with a roommate, but she's out of town visiting family. My mom knows my general schedule, but not specific days. I don't really talk about work details with my neighbors. Social media? Do you post about work? Check in at the hospital, anything like that? Maya thought about her social media accounts. I might have posted about being tired after long shifts, but I don't think I ever mentioned specific times or days. There was a knock on the door, and Officer Kim entered with a folder. We've got the identification lineup ready and the suspect's initial statements. What did they say? Maya asked. Kim flipped through the pages. Not much. They lawyered up pretty quickly, but they did make one interesting comment before they stopped talking. What was that? One of them said, and I quote, "This wasn't supposed to happen tonight. Someone screwed up the plan." Rodriguez and Maya exchanged glances. That supports the theory about the anonymous tip, Rodriguez said. Someone on the inside warned us. There's more, Kim continued. We ran their names through the system. Both of them have prior arrests for similar crimes: stalking, attempted robbery, assault on women walking alone. Maya felt a wave of anger replace some of her fear. These weren't just random criminals making bad decisions. They were predators who had done this before. How many other women have they hurt? She asked. We're still piecing that together. But based on their records and the evidence we found tonight, probably more than we initially thought. The identification process was surprisingly quick. Maya looked through a one-way window at a lineup of 6 men, including the 2 suspects, even though she hadn't gotten a clear look at their faces during her walk. Something about their posture and build felt familiar. Number 3 and number 5, she said, pointing to the 2 men she remembered from the patrol car. Are you certain? The officer conducting the lineup asked. Maya took a deep breath. As certain as I can be given the circumstances. Those are the 2 men I saw following me. After the identification, Rodriguez walked Maya back to the conference room. That was good work. Between your identification, the evidence we found on them, and their prior records, the district attorney should be able to build a strong case. What happens now? Now they get processed and arraigned. Depending on what the DA decides to charge them with, they could be looking at serious prison time. Maya felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. And the other cases? The women who were attacked before? We'll be reopening those investigations with this new evidence. If these are the same guys, and I think they are, those women might finally get some justice. As they prepared to leave the station, Maya realized something had changed in how she felt about the whole experience. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else, a sense of purpose. "Detective Rodriguez," she said as they walked toward the exit. "Yeah? I want to help. With the other cases, I mean. If there's anything I can do to help those other women or prevent this from happening to someone else." Rodriguez smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that, because I think this case is far from over." 3 months later, Maya stood in front of a packed conference room at the hospital, looking out at an audience of nurses, technicians, security guards, and administrators. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. That was progress. 6 months ago, I never would have imagined standing here talking about what happened to me, she began. But here's what I learned that night. Sometimes the scariest experiences can lead to the most important changes. In the back of the room, she spotted Detective Rodriguez, who had become something like a mentor over the past few months. He gave her an encouraging nod. The trial had concluded 2 weeks earlier. Both men were sentenced to 8 years in prison for attempted kidnapping, stalking, and possession of weapons with intent to commit a crime. But more importantly, their convictions had helped close 4 other cases involving attacks on healthcare workers. "The men who targeted me weren't just random criminals," Maya continued. "They were part of a network that specifically hunted women who worked late shifts at hospitals across the city. They had detailed information about our schedules, our routes home, even our personal habits." She clicked to the next slide in her presentation, showing a map of the hospital district with red dots marking where attacks had occurred. The investigation revealed something disturbing. These men had an inside source, someone who worked in hospital administration and had access to employee schedules. Someone who sold our information for $100 per person. A murmur went through the audience. Maya knew this part still shocked people, even though it had been in the news for weeks. The inside source turned out to be a temporary worker in the HR department who had been struggling financially and saw an opportunity to make easy money. He'd been selling detailed employee information to criminal networks for months. The anonymous tip that saved Maya's life came from his girlfriend, who finally realized what he was doing and couldn't live with the guilt. "But here's the important part," Maya said, advancing to the next slide. "What happened that night led to real changes that are making all of us safer." The hospital had implemented a comprehensive safety program that other medical centers were now copying. Late shift workers could request security escorts to their cars or to public transportation. The employee parking lot had new lighting and security cameras. Most importantly, there was now a secure rideshare program that covered the cost of transportation home for anyone working past 10 p.m. The Safe Ride program has been used over 2,000 times in the past 3 months, Maya explained. That's 2,000 times that someone didn't have to walk home alone in the dark. In the audience, Maya could see Dr. Chen, who had become one of the program's biggest supporters. He told Maya later that he felt guilty for not insisting on that cab ride the night everything happened. "I also want to talk about the other survivors," Maya said, her voice softening. "Because my story isn't the only one that matters here." Over the past 3 months, Maya had met with the 3 other women who had been attacked. Together, they'd formed a support group that met twice a month. It started as a way to deal with their shared trauma, but it had evolved into something more powerful, a force for change. Lisa, the lab technician who was the first victim, had initially been reluctant to get involved. She just wanted to put the whole experience behind her, but when she learned that her attackers were finally caught, she agreed to meet with Maya. "I thought I was handling it fine on my own," Lisa had told Maya during their first coffee meeting. "But talking to someone who really understands what it's like, that made all the difference." Jennifer, the respiratory therapist, had thrown herself into advocating for better security measures at all the city's hospitals. She'd testified before the city council and helped draft new safety requirements for healthcare facilities. Priya, the pharmacy technician who had escaped by ducking into a convenience store, had started a self-defense class specifically for healthcare workers. It met every Saturday morning in the hospital gym, and it was always packed. Each of us dealt with what happened differently, Maya told the audience. But together, We've been able to create something positive from our experiences. The support group had expanded beyond just the 4 original survivors. They now had 12 regular members, women who had experienced various forms of harassment or threats while working in healthcare. They'd started a mentorship program, pairing new healthcare workers with experienced staff who could share safety tips and provide support. The most important thing we learned is that staying silent doesn't protect anyone, Maya said. When we share our experiences and work together, we can prevent these things from happening to others. After the presentation, people lined up to ask questions and share their own experiences. Maya was struck by how many stories there were: near misses, uncomfortable encounters, times when people had felt unsafe but hadn't known what to do about it. Dr. Martinez, the emergency department chief, shook Maya's hand as the crowd was dispersing. "You've started something really important here," she said. "We're getting calls from hospitals and other cities asking about our safety programs." "That's exactly what we hoped would happen," Maya replied. "If we can prevent even one person from going through what we did, all of this effort is worth it." Rodriguez approached as the room was clearing out. "Great presentation," he said. "You've come a long way from that scared nurse I met in the coffee shop." Maya laughed. "I'm still scared sometimes, but now I know what to do with that fear." "Any regrets about getting so involved in all this?" Maya thought about the question. The past 3 months had been intense. Between the trial preparation, the media interviews, the speaking engagements, and starting the support group, she'd barely had time to process her own experience. But she wouldn't change any of it. "No regrets," she said. "I learned something that night that I don't think I would have learned any other way." "What's that?" "That sometimes the thing you're most afraid of can become your greatest source of strength." Rodriguez smiled. "I think you're going to inspire a lot of people with that message." As Maya packed up her presentation materials, she thought about how different her life was now compared to 6 months ago. She was still working as a nurse, but she'd also become something she never expected: an advocate, a speaker, a voice for change. The hospital had offered to promote her to a position in their new safety department, but Maya had decided to stay in patient care. She loved nursing, and she didn't want what happened to her to take that away. But she was also committed to the advocacy work. Next month, she was scheduled to speak at a national healthcare conference about workplace safety. The month after that, she was meeting with legislators about expanding safety requirements for all late-shift workers, not just in hospitals. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mom. "Watched your presentation online. So proud of you, sweetheart." The hospital had live-streamed the presentation, and Maya knew her family and friends were watching. It felt strange to have her experience shared so publicly, but she'd gotten dozens of messages from people saying her story had inspired them to take their own safety more seriously or seek help for their own difficult experiences. As she walked out to the parking lot, Maya automatically checked her Siro endings, something she'd probably do for the rest of her life. But instead of fear, she felt awareness. Instead of vulnerability, she felt prepared. The new LED lights illuminated every corner of the lot. A security guard waved to her from his booth. Her car was parked close to the building, in one of the designated safe parking spots. All of these changes existed because she and the other survivors had refused to stay silent. Because Detective Rodriguez had been in the right place at the right time. Because an anonymous caller had found the courage to do the right thing. Maya got in her car and drove home through well-lit streets, past the coffee shop where everything had changed, past the corner where she'd first realized she was being followed. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about what could have happened. She was thinking about what did happen, how a single night of terror had become the starting point for something bigger than herself. As she pulled into her driveway, Maya's phone rang. It was Jennifer, the respiratory therapist. "Hey," Jennifer said. "I just watched your presentation. I wanted to tell you something." "What's that?" "A woman came up to me after my self-defense class today. She said she'd been walking home alone from work for 2 years. But after hearing our story on the news, she started using the rideshare program. Tonight was her first night using it." Maya smiled. "That's exactly what this is all about. I know. I just wanted you to know that what we're doing is working. People are listening. People are making different choices." After they hung up, Maya sat in her car for a moment, looking at her apartment building. The same building she'd been walking toward that night. The place that had seemed so far away when she was being followed. Now it just looked like home. Maya got out of her car, walked confidently to her front door, and went inside to plan her next speaking engagement. There were more stories to tell, more people to help, and more changes to make. The scared nurse walking alone in the dark was still part of her story. But now she was also the advocate, the survivor, the woman who turned her worst night into a force for good. And that, Maya thought as she settled in for the evening, was a story worth telling.